A dark sky hung low over a small college town in Texas. Rain poured down, soaking the streets as Mark Davis walked along, lost in his thoughts. At just 23, he was drowning in debt, trying to balance law school, a part-time job, and the weight of his late father's financial mistakes. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Mark sighed and answered, "Hello. Mark Davis speaking." A cold, firm voice came through. "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Brooks. I want to meet you about your financial troubles." Mark froze, confused. "Who are you, and how do you know about my—" "I know enough," she interrupted. "Meet me at Brooks Bistro tonight at 7 o'clock. It's important." Before Mark could respond, the call ended. Bewildered, he found himself heading to the upscale cafe that evening. The rain was relentless, but his curiosity pushed him forward. Inside, warmth and light greeted him, contrasting the storm outside. In a quiet corner, an elegant older woman sat. Her silver hair gleamed, and her tailored suit screamed wealth. "Mark," she said, gesturing for him to sit. Her voice was calm, but her presence demanded attention. He hesitated before sitting. "Mrs. Brooks, what is this about?" She took a sip of her tea, her piercing blue eyes locking onto his. "I know about your debts. I know about your struggling mother and sister. I have a solution for you." Mark frowned. "What kind of solution?" Setting her cup down, she leaned forward. "Marry me." Her words hit him like thunder. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she said coolly. "This isn't love. It's a business deal. I'll pay off all your debts, cover your family's needs, and secure your future. In return, you'll be my husband." Mark laughed nervously. "This is insane. Why me? You don't even know me." "That's the point," Eleanor said calmly. "You're young, desperate, and unattached. I don't need love. I need a husband for appearances, a companion to share my name and my estate. It's just practical." Mark shook his head, stunned. "And what do you get out of this?" Her voice softened, almost vulnerable. "I've been alone my entire life. No children, no family. I want someone to be there, even if it's just for show, and I need to secure my legacy. A husband makes it easier." Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "I need time to think." "Take your time," she said, unfazed. "But my offer won't last forever." That night, Mark poured his heart out to his mother. The weight of his family's debts and his sister's education had drained every ounce of hope. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "how can I marry a stranger just for money?" His mother, frail from illness, looked at him with tearful eyes. "Mark, sometimes we have to do things we don't want to survive. If this helps you, helps us. Maybe it's worth it." Torn between pride and desperation, Mark wrestled with his decision. The next morning, he returned to the bistro. Eleanor was waiting, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. "So?" she asked, not even glancing up. Mark took a deep breath. "I'll do it." A faint smile crossed her face. "Good. Let's begin." But Mark had no idea what he was stepping into. Just 7 days after marrying Eleanor, a shocking truth would turn his world upside down. Stay tuned for part 2 of this jaw-dropping story, because this is only the beginning. "Mark," Peter said, lowering his voice, "if someone signed a contract under lies or pressure, could they get out of it?" Peter squinted at him. "Technically, yes, but it depends on the proof. Why are you asking? Are you in trouble?" Mark forced a smile. "No, just a class project. Thanks, Peter." But Mark wasn't being honest. For the next few days, he quietly searched Eleanor's office whenever she wasn't around. He needed answers, anything to explain her strange obsession with his family. Late one night, as Mark sifted through her desk drawers, his heart froze. There it was, an envelope addressed to his father. Inside was a letter written by Eleanor. Her words were like knives, filled with hatred and pain. "You destroyed us. You stole everything. My husband couldn't handle the stress, and now he's gone because of you. I will make sure your family pays for what you've done." Mark's hands shook as he reread the letter. His stomach churned. This wasn't just about money. Eleanor's marriage proposal was part of a cruel revenge plot, fueled by years of grief and anger. Quietly, he put the letter back where he found it. But in his mind, he was already planning his escape. He couldn't be her pawn. That night, Mark sketched out ways to leave the estate for good. But Eleanor, with her sharp instincts, wasn't so easily fooled. The next morning, she cornered him in the breakfast room. Her icy presence sent shivers down his spine. "You've been busy, haven't you?" she said, her voice cutting through the silence. Mark froze, his spoon midair. "I don't know what you mean." Her smile was cold, almost chilling. "Don't play games with me, Mark. Do you think I wouldn't notice? I've handled far bigger threats than you." Mark forced himself to stay calm. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Eleanor leaned in, her voice now a venomous whisper. "If you betray me, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Remember that." She straightened, walking out of the room like a queen who had just delivered a death sentence. Mark sat there, his mind racing. Escape seemed impossible, but staying meant giving up his freedom. Later that day, Mark paced the estate library, the weight of everything crushing him. A private investigator he had secretly hired had just delivered damning evidence. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Mark's father had swindled Eleanor's husband, Harold Brooks, in a fraudulent real estate deal years ago. The scam had destroyed Harold's fortune and left him so stressed he died of a heart attack. This wasn't just a twisted business arrangement for Eleanor. It was her way of making Mark's family suffer for the sins of his father. Mark clenched his fists, anger and guilt swirling inside him. Why was he paying for someone else's mistakes? But he also understood Eleanor's pain. Losing everything, her husband, her life, had turned her into someone obsessed with revenge. That evening, Mark met Peter in secret. Together, they went through the evidence Mark had collected. Among the papers, they found something shocking. Eleanor wasn't just after revenge. She was involved in illegal deals, falsifying reports, and building shady partnerships to regain her lost wealth. "Peter," Mark said, his voice trembling, "this is enough to stop her, but you have to be careful. If she finds out, she won't let us walk away." Peter nodded. "We'll expose her, Mark. She can't keep getting away with this." Mark's jaw tightened. "She's done enough damage to everyone around her. This ends now." But could Mark outsmart someone as ruthless as Eleanor? Or would her web of lies and revenge trap him forever? Stay tuned for the shocking conclusion to this twisted tale. Mark and Peter carefully planned their next move. Armed with the evidence against Eleanor, they needed to ensure it would reach the right hands, authorities who could bring her down without her discovering their involvement. But Eleanor wasn't one to be outsmarted easily. The very next day, Mark noticed 2 new security guards patrolling the estate. Cameras had been installed in areas where they hadn't been before, and Eleanor's demeanor grew colder, more calculating. At breakfast, she sat across from Mark, her gaze sharp. "You've been restless lately," she said, stirring her tea. "Anything you want to share?" Mark forced a casual smile. "Just adjusting to this new life." She leaned back, smirking. "Good. I'd hate for you to forget our arrangement." Mark's heart raced, but he kept his composure. He had to act quickly before Eleanor's suspicions solidified. That evening, Mark met Peter in a secluded park far from the estate. They reviewed the evidence one final time. Financial statements proving Eleanor's illegal activities, correspondence with shady business partners, and a recording of her threatening Mark. "This is enough to put her away," Peter said, "but we need a solid plan to deliver this without her catching wind." Mark nodded. "I'll distract her while you take it to the authorities. Once it's in their hands, it's over." But as they parted ways, neither of them realized that Eleanor's men had been watching. The next morning, Mark woke up to find Eleanor waiting for him in the library. Her expression was colder than ever. "You've been busy," she said, tossing a folder onto the table. Mark's stomach dropped. Inside were photos of him meeting Peter, copies of some of the evidence, and surveillance shots of their secret meetings. "You think I wouldn't know?" she hissed. "You're a fool, Mark. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me?" Mark tried to stay calm. You can't keep this up forever, Eleanor. Sooner or later, someone will expose you. She smiled darkly. Perhaps, but you won't be around to see it. Before Mark could react, two of her guards grabbed him, dragging him to a locked room in the basement of the estate. You'll stay here, Eleanor said, her voice eerily calm. Think about your betrayal while I decide what to do with you. Meanwhile, Peter realized something was wrong when Mark didn't show up for their scheduled meeting. Fearing the worst, he contacted the private investigator they had hired earlier. Together, they devised a risky plan to break into the estate and retrieve Mark. Under the cover of darkness, Peter and the investigator infiltrated the property. They used Mark's detailed descriptions of the estate to navigate the labyrinth of hallways. After hours of searching, they found him locked in the basement, bruised but alive. You came back, Mark said, his voice hoarse with relief. Of course, Peter replied. We're getting you out of here. As they tried to leave, alarms blared. Eleanor, alerted by the commotion, appeared at the top of the stairs, flanked by her guards. Did you really think you could escape? She sneered. Peter stepped forward. It's over, Eleanor. The evidence is already with the authorities. They're coming for you. Eleanor's confident smirk faltered for the first time. You're bluffing. Mark pulled out a small recording device from his pocket. Am I? Everything you've said and done is on here. Even if you stop us now, it's too late. For a moment, Eleanor's icy facade cracked. Desperation flashed in her eyes. She lunged toward Mark, but Peter and the investigator managed to hold her back long enough for the police to arrive, alerted by the private investigator's earlier call. As Eleanor was led away in handcuffs, she turned to Mark one last time. Her voice was venomous but tinged with a strange sadness. You think you've won? My legacy won't die with me. Mark watched her disappear into the night, a mix of relief and lingering fear washing over him. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor's crimes were fully exposed and her empire crumbled. Mark's family finally had a chance to breathe as the debts were erased, and his sister's education was secured. But Mark knew the scars of his ordeal would stay with him. As he walked through the now empty estate one last time, he couldn't shake Eleanor's final words. Her revenge had failed, but her shadow loomed large, a reminder that the past, no matter how painful, always leaves its mark.